दुनिया से ये सुकून
Welcome to a very controversial episode. Just quickly, I did release an episode last week about the mindset of man after marriage. That's been delayed because we have a very controversial and more topical subject that we need to bring to the fore and address immediately. So I have with me here two fine gentlemen. Andy, George, thank you for joining me. We're going to be discussing the protests and really, are the protesters or rioters racist, and what are the sort of underlying undercurrent problems? So that's what we're going to discuss today, and hopefully you can tune in, benefit, but more importantly, we need to find middle ground, because whether we like it or not, we coexist in our different communities and societies, so we have to learn to get along. But I do want to know what it is that's the problem. What is behind this rioting? Obviously it was triggered by the horrific, heinous crimes of a child, or so to speak. He's 17, he's turned 18, African boy from Wales, and he perhaps had mental health issues, and he stabbed 3 innocent children. And my thoughts and prayers are with their parents, because I think if we take sort of conquer and divide out of it, ultimately those 3 little girls had parents that brought them up, weaned them, and nothing's going to bring them back. So our thoughts and prayers are with them, and I think the whole world, including this nation, should show compassion to those people. But the ensuing of the rioting and protesting and the looting and the pillaging, alongside perhaps the racism and Islamophobia, will be addressed today. Now, Andy, just a quick introduction. Thank you for coming on. I'm going to introduce myself for you, rather. You're my middle class, the sort of worldly man that's been around the world, a professional in your own right, and I have George as well. That's the common man, the working class man. I hope you don't mind me saying that.
No,
yeah.
Facts are facts.
Facts are facts, and we're going to discuss facts today. So I want to pick both of your brains today about if the rioters or protesters that are happening as we speak now, are they racist, or are they common people, or is it a mixed bag? Just before we do start, I want to thank my main sponsor, Ahyan Estates. They operate in London. They provide, they manage properties, and they provide guaranteed rent. So look them up if you want to let out your properties. Also, RC Catering, if you're planning to get married, parties, mendies, reach out to them as well. So, right, without further ado, I'm going to start with George.
Hello, welcome. Thanks for having me.
No, that's all right. Thanks for coming in. I think it's very brave of you, and I want you to be honest, so don't pull your punches. There's too many conversations being had, whether it's on LBC or on other platforms, where people are scared to say what they think. And I hope you're not scared. You don't look like you fear anyone. So,
never show weakness.
Good. My first question to you is, the riots and the protests that have been happening, are they racists? Are they thugs?
It's a difficult question. I mean, if you're going to believe everything the media say, then yes. But I think these people are just fighting for their rights. It wouldn't matter what skin colour you are, what religion you are. If you're seeing, innocent children being murdered by a foreigner, be from wherever, then, and it's more of this might be just things have accumulated. It's not just something out of the blue, wages are stagnant. It's hard to get a job. Even if you do get a job, you can't buy a nice house or in a nice area, and you can't do things what you used to do as a kid. Things are different, and life's hard, and if there's other people who you don't know, your families weren't brought up on the same street with their families, you don't know who they are, and of course you're going to be suspicious. And when the red mist comes over during this rioting, I'm sure everyone's been angry, everyone's been upset. You don't think straight. You're just part of the masses. You just, go with the flow. So it's hard to say if they're racist or not. I think they're just fighting for themselves and their families.
Quickly, would you join those protesters?
I would protest, but if if they're burning places and, you know, violence towards innocent people, then I really don't condone that, and I wouldn't want to join. And I definitely wouldn't want to get locked up because someone next to me done something bad and I didn't stop them, and, you know.
Right, I'm going to pick your brains. You said that this evil boy that did stab these small innocent girls, that is a foreigner. By that definition, am I a foreigner?
Well, I mean, am I a foreigner as well? My mum is half Indian. On my dad's side, one of his great-great-grandmas, I think on his mum's side, was half Jamaican, half Irish. So I'm a product of immigration myself. I wouldn't be here if not for immigrants.
But my question to you
I
is...
consider myself English.
You look English.
What would I call you? Well, it depends. You were born here?
Yep.
And your parents born here? Or,
no.
But you were born here. You speak fluent English, you know, you don't have an accent. I wouldn't necessarily call you a foreigner. I wouldn't maybe...
So,
it's
that young black kid, would you... Because if you look at it and, you know, if you look at the England squad...
Yeah.
Their origins are from Africa. But if you ask them, they play for the England team, and even though English may be an ethnicity, they definitely think they're British.
They've made their home here, you know. And I think if you want to come here and you want to work and, you know, be a good citizen, then there's ways you come to the country. Through airports, through, you know, you apply for asylum, you get on a boat, an actual boat that comes into a ferry, into a port, and... Or you'd get an airplane into an airport and you go through the right things. If you're letting in thousands of undocumented people and stuff, then yeah, you are a bloody foreigner. But if you've come over the right way, my nan came over from India. You know, used to be a colony. She came over. She married an Englishman and came over here and settled here. And she made a good life and, so, you know, raised some kids.
So, obviously, I know we don't speak for the wider common man.
Yeah.
So, the question to you again, would you consider me a foreigner? Because obviously, you look like you've got Asian features, dark features, but would you consider me a foreigner?
If I were to see you on the street, honestly, I probably would think you was a foreigner.
Thank you for being honest.
But then, after talking to you, and I see you in the gym quite regularly, we train together and we always have a little conversation, say hello, and... obviously now I know a bit of your background. I wouldn't say you're a foreigner, but it's, you know, you always...
That's because you know me.
Everyone has a judgment.
So that's because you know me, so it's a perception. Yeah. Quickly, Andy, you've heard George speak. What's your take on the heinous incident that happened in Southport, and then thereafter what ensued?
So,
if you pick your mic up a little bit, yeah.
So, as a dad of a little girl, that really cut me deep. Like hearing that news, I actually, you know, shed more than a few tears. I don't, you know, usually get emotional about news stories, but because it was really close to home, and, you know, one of the little girls actually looked quite a lot like my daughter, you know, it really kind of affected me. The sort of the jump from that horrific set of events to, you know, mass rioting targeted towards, you know, immigrants of all kinds. It seems pretty indiscriminate. You know, setting fire to bins and shoving them through hotel windows where there are asylum seekers, you know, staying while their, you know, cases are being processed or whatever. It just seems like a tragic, just mutation of, you know, what should have been a period of reflection and, you know, kind of mourning in a way, to just an outburst of anger and violence that seems to have been sort of propagated by some pretty extreme elements of the right wing via social media, and whipped up a mob of people that is, you know, I think it is a mixed bag, but there are people that are genuinely angry for very good reasons, with, you know, largely government having overpromised and underdelivered to specific segments of, you know, the white working class kind of, you know, group of individuals within the country, and that's legitimate anger, but that has been hijacked, I think, by, you know, some really malicious and, you know, just really horrible elements within the UK on the like I say, on the extreme right wing, and they've whipped up that group into a state via social media where they are torching hotels and they're targeting immigration processing centres, and all elements of the kind of the immigration infrastructure, and I think at the root of that, and particularly the sort of the people that are posting this stuff on social media, there is a large degree of racism. That there just is, right? But unfortunately, I think there are a lot of people who are rightly angry, who've been caught up in that, been duped by misinformation, disinformation propagated on social media, to the extent where, like I say, they're torching hotels and the like. Now, I think there are elements within that group who, let's call it the football hooligan kind of element, who are just there for a ruck, right? They just love a bit of violence. They get off on the anarchy of being involved in that sort of stuff. And ostensibly, they may not at the root be racist, but if it has been caused by the likes of Tommy Robinson or whomever online, and kind of the people of that kind of extreme right wing kind of ilk who've mobilised this group, then I think you kind of have to lump them in a bit as well, because they are actually on the end, the kind of essence of it, are acting on behalf of people who would probably admit to being racist.
Thanks for that, Andy. I do want to decipher that. If you just pick up your mic a little bit, just in case it falls off.
Sorry, I've got.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right. It's not your fault. So, I'm glad again both of you have been honest, and there is elements of racism, but to me, I look like ostensibly as a foreign man. Yeah. So when I see, and they may have valid reasons for protesting, I get it, and we'll go into that. But when they're protesting against people that look like me, albeit they wasn't born here, so their mannerisms, the way they dress, the way they look, and these are people from second and third world countries that are seeking refuge in this country. I was watching an episode on LBC earlier on, and the Home Office haven't processed all of the asylum applications, but 80 to 85% of those asylum seekers are eligible to stay. And that's statistically speaking. So these people have fled perhaps a genocide, a dictatorial regime, an autocracy. They're running and fleeing for their lives. And I'll be quite honest with you. Your image is what Britain puts out as an ambassadorial role to the rest of the world. So there's someone like you that's educated, not that you're not educated, George, educated to a certain level, middle class to the world. But you, as a middle class Englishman from the counties, right? So you see the sort of far right and the working class doing what they're doing. How much will you distance yourself as a middle class Englishman or person from these people?
I mean, I completely condemn it, and I find it embarrassing, honestly. There's a lot of the sort of the right wing, kind of propaganda out there about, our boys fought on the beaches of Normandy to, fighting for their country, all that sort of stuff. The deep irony of it is that the Second World War that they're talking about was fought against Nazism, right? And exactly the type of, divisive, racist, genocidal, just horrific ideology that Nazism was. And so to then sort of say, well, okay, we're fighting for this country, but while sort of, espousing similar views to, well, okay, it's Britain for the indigenous white man over anybody else, and therefore if I'm a white man in the UK, I deserve to have just a right to a job regardless of whether or not I've got a criminal record or I've actually done anything to kind of deserve that from a from a qualifications perspective. That is deeply racist and tragic, and frankly I find it embarrassing.
Lastly, and I want you to assess this situation. So the boy that did the killing, right, is a wrong human being, first and foremost. Could you imagine if that boy looked like me? Obviously a younger version, I'm a man. Could you imagine the right-wing media, or just the media in general, what they depict? Because as a direct consequence of him stabbing these innocent three little girls, souls rather, mosques were smashed up. And I'm going to go into the other things that have been happening. But could you imagine if if a boy like me or someone that looks like me or depicts the Muslim British man, what would have been the reaction then? Because even though we weren't even involved, we're still picking up the pieces here. Tell me what would have happened then.
You're asking me or George?
I'm asking you.
So it's hard to think of being much different, to be honest with you. I think largely the reason why there is this outburst of, kind of angst towards the kind of non-ethnically British groups by this what is a minority of individuals is because he was black, right? He was from Rwanda. Yeah, he was born in. His parents were from Rwanda, so he was ethnically African.
Yeah.
And despite the fact him being born in Cardiff, there's all this sudden torrent of, racist violence, right? So I think regardless of his actual, place of birth and his heritage, the fact that he's not white and British, it would have been the same had it been an Asian man, I believe.
But my question to you is, with an Asian man, it's not just our ethnicity. We come with a banner. It's almost inextricably linked that we come with our religion. Most of us. I don't call myself South Asian. If you ask me what I am, I'll tell you I'm Muslim. Does that make sense? So the religion gets attacked.
I think it's more of a wider thing than just what's happened. This is just the match that starts the fire. It's been building for decades probably. All this sort of stuff, racial tension and stuff. And I think people are just at their wits' end. You try voting, that's all a scam. No matter who you vote for, they're all going to do the same thing. So yeah, you try and voice opinions as you should, but the media shuts you down. Try and vote for certain things, and it's just people fighting back. It's a shame. A lot of stuff is wrong, and shouldn't be happening. And quite frankly, seeing grown men and adults doing the stuff they're doing in their own towns and cities where they live, and you're burning places where your own high street. Who's going to fix that? You're going to walk past that shop every day of your life. Feel like a right idiot if you've done that. But then, how do you protest? How do you? If you've tried doing peaceful protests, you tried voting, tried things, but then everyone pushes you down. So now, I feel English people are the second-class citizens in this country.
I sympathise for the English working-class man. I really do. Because I'm impartial. I can't go into that. But we don't even want to get into that. What happened to that stomp on that kid, that South Asian Muslim kid in Manchester? I get the video prior to that, but I don't want to get to. I want to leave that to aside just quickly. You say you voted and no one's listening to you, and I'm speaking to you as
in general, like people, they say, "Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that," vote
but
for us. We're going to make wages better. We're going to stop all these illegal immigrants coming over. But then they just open the floodgates.
But I think
the Navy helps the boats get to shore.
Again, I think that's an innuendo. I want to ask you a direct question here, because I'm going to respect you as a representative of the working class Englishman, right? So you said that we vote, no one listens to us. The media, knocks us down or stifles us or silences us. What is it that you want? Because the facts are, there's the demographics, according to the Office for National Statistics, that 8% of this country are from an ethnic minority group. Yep, 8%.
Take a walk down any high road and tell me that's only 8%.
So you're saying it's more?
They also said there's bombs, there's weapons of mass destruction in Afghanistan. There's a lot of things they say on the news.
So you're saying just blatantly lies?
Bull crap.
Okay, let's go. I'm trying to narrow down to what it is that the Englishman has a gripe for. So tell me.
We want a good quality of life, and quality of life is declining. Wages are stagnant, if not dropping off.
Right.
What I earned as being an electrician, people earning 20 years ago. Wages haven't changed. But what you could buy 20 years ago with your money was a lot more than you buy 20 years
But that's with everyone, though, isn't it?
But
I'm in the same boat as you.
There's more people, it drives the demand for work down, yeah? So you've got more workers than there are work. So then they can push wages
No,
down.
I disagree.
Then we're all in debt. Like debt's going through.
That's because of the capitalist
it
system.
adds, yeah. So it's a wider thing.
Okay.
It's not just.
I want to touch. I
It's
want
our
you to.
quality of life is going
I
down,
want-
and that is a way
okay.
for people to express
I
themselves.
want you to touch on a street. So
as-
you're in East London, all right?
Yeah.
Or perhaps more Essex.
Born and bred.
Born and bred,
in
right?
East London.
So I can say confidently, I'm 31 years of age, right? Even from when I was growing up, yeah, the high streets have changed. They've quite obviously and patently become a lot more ethnic minority. You don't see the old chippy there anymore. Pubs are closing down. So is that the problem, that your English towns and streets are not English anymore?
Probably, yeah, because it's not what people are used to when you're growing up. You're seeing everything changing, and I don't necessarily think it's for the better. You know, our quality of life's going down. Obviously, you come from a well, if people have come from war-torn countries and have applied for citizenship, they get it. And yeah, good luck. Come over here, make a new life for yourself. Life is hard.
Life is hard, yeah.
Life is tough anywhere you go.
Yeah.
We're lucky we're born in this country.
Yeah.
So I may only earn X amount of money here, which might be working class, the lower classes, but compared to the rest of the world, we're like millionaires to them. We've won the lottery, so I can understand you want to come here.
I'm glad you've acknowledged
You know?
that. Quickly, if we shut our borders now,
Yeah.
there's no asylum seekers, no more immigrants from India, China, and all over the world. And most of these people come with money. Most of these Chinese and Indian investors that come to this country, they're the ones buying up Canary Wharf
But
and
these are
central
people
London.
who live far away or in big houses, and
No,
this isn't
no,
the
no,
people who
no,
come in
no,
and
no,
working
no.
on
I think it's an illusion.
streets
I think it's an
and
illusion.
building
And I think
street
Andy will come in and
sites
he'll
and
weigh in
stuff.
here because he's in finance. But all of these high rise that you see in East London and further afield, these £500,000, £600,000 properties, you and I are not affording that. These are foreign investors and they're coming to put their money here. You know why they're coming to put their money here?
Because we let them.
No,
the
it's not
government
that.
lets them hide the money.
It's not about hiding money. One thing you've got to realise, yeah, and Andy, please weigh in here. England and Britain, what do we manufacture?
Not a lot,
Not a lot. How are we one of the richest countries in the world?
because we have a private banking system that we've ruled for
We
centuries.
sell services.
Yeah.
Andy, do you want to come in and talk about services, but more so to race relations? If we don't open our borders, and let foreign investment come in, which this country heavily relies upon, particularly London and the southeast, and the London and southeast, it feeds everywhere else in the country, right? The tax generated from the southeast feeds the whole country. I get the north and south divide, but if the Russians and Chinese and the Arabs and the Indians stop pumping money into London and buying these high-rise flats that are sort of unobtainable to you and I, what would happen? What would happen to England and their service, insurance, law sectors? What would happen?
The economy as a whole would suffer, right? That would be the immediate sort of impact, and the sort of fallout of that would be, various, right? But I think sort of going back to one of George's points, I think what we're talking about here is, over the last, half century, let's say, there's been an increase in, globalization has been the thing that has driven economic growth and, massive increase in prosperity, generally speaking, across the majority of the world, right? But there are groups of individuals who don't or haven't necessarily benefited from that, right? So, yes, rich metropolitan people in London selling services globally, I can put myself in that bracket.
Yep.
There's a lot of individuals who've come over through various routes of immigration who have been gladly welcomed by, it's called UK Limited, because they are a cheap source of labour, right? And they come in with, as you say, a lot of skills and a lot of motivation to do well and do well for themselves. The people who are kind of shut out of that, in large part have been people at the lower end of the socio-economic spectrum, indigenous sort of Brits, who maybe don't have quite so much to offer in terms of qualifications or anything else to the to these big sort of corporates, and so they are feeling left behind, right? And you can trace it back to probably the 70s, and looking at sort of 1980s, Thatcher taking away the coal mines and stuff in the north of England hasn't really been replaced by anything in terms of a source of economic, prosperity. So there's a group of disaffected people up there, bringing things a bit, further forward. There was all this sort of multicultural, policies in the 1990s under Blair and the new Labour government.
Yeah.
That was promised to be this sort of, utopian dream. Then, kind of fast forward to, 2016 Brexit referendum, the promises of these sunlit uplands, Brexit's going to solve all your problems. Then Johnson comes along and says, oh yeah, we're going to level up all these places that aren't quite as prosperous as London. None of this has happened. It's not really benefited the group of people that we're talking about, who have basically been, sadly, sort of the losers of globalization.
But I don't buy the economic element of things.
Well, just hear me out, right? But that group of individuals is angry.
Yeah.
Right? And so that, as George said, that anger has been building and building and building for decades, right? And as he said, this random event, which is horrific and completely unrelated to any of what I've just been talking about, has set the spark to, just a mass wave of violence and outpouring of anger. Now, the contradiction is that those two things are completely unrelated. Murder of 3 little girls by somebody who was born in Cardiff and a massive backlash against immigration. The problem is that there's been people online, prominent individuals, who've been conflating the two things.
Yeah.
And this group of people are receptive to it. They need they've been looking for some sort of outlet for
Stimulant,
the anger. Yeah. So regardless of whether Chinese investors or Qatari investors or whoever it is stop buying places in London, that group of people is not really going to affect them, because they're already locked out of the system, right? That's the reason I've kind of gone through that big sort of spiel, is because I think actually for that group of people it would make a blind bit of difference.
That's true. I do, and again, I apologise for interrupting you. I do think the economic issues, they matter, but I don't think that's the crux of the matter. And it's back to what you said. And let's have an honest conversation here, right? You guys didn't agree to come here and free up your evening to talk to me about a sort of pulling your punches. I want to get to the crux of it. So immigration. I've got a hypothetical scenario for you. So our borders are locked now. Yep, they're locked. The refugees can't come in.
Okay, all right.
No one else is coming in, not through a tourist visa, not an economic visa. Even if you're a billionaire, but you're not a white person, if you're not English, you're not allowed into the country, right? So we've locked all our borders. There's martial law, but there's a big population of ethnic minorities in this country already. My hypothesis is, even if we lock our borders, those people that are protesting and rioting still don't want us here. Even though I was born here.
Absolutely right. More than likely, most of the people actually doing the rioting and protesting, they probably strongly
don't want me
agree
here.
with you. I mean, that's just life. If you were me as a white person, if I was to go to Australia,
Right.
the white people there would dig me out and cause me trouble. It's all because I'm just not from there. We've got the same colour skin, same colour, but they'll dig me out because I'm not from there. That's their area. I'm not from there.
Right.
So there's always going to be that.
So let's talk about that
We're
then.
simple creatures. We're animals. We're not robots. We're animals. We all do stuff we shouldn't. We know we shouldn't drink fizzy drinks. We all like a can of Coke. We all
But
we shouldn't eat chocolate. So we all do.
This is descending
It's
into...
true.
There's no
nature
correlation
and-
between drinking a can of Coke and smashing someone's head in. No.
Very
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
But that is true. But I think, it's just a tough one.
So
'cause
it's-
everyone's going to be
So
different.
you look to the politicians
But-
and you look to whatever
Yeah.
the government of the day to lock our borders.
We just want a good quality of life.
But
and our quality of life is going down, and probably a lot of it is to do with we don't need all these people here. Schools are bursting at the seams. You
Right.
can't get hospitals. Try getting if you need an operation or
It's true.
something done. Try going in your doctors.
Yeah.
In your local G. I've been going to the same dentist and doctors for 36 years. Do you know how before you just walk in, boom, get a thing in, done. Do you know how long it takes to get? You won't even get a doctor's
I
appointment.
can corroborate with that, but my question to you is this.
There's just too many people.
Okay,
for what's
right.
here.
So we lock our borders. Direct question. We lock our borders. No one else is coming in. There is a stockpile of ethnic minorities already here. Someone like me, right? I'd consider myself perhaps I don't know, I don't think I fit into any class, but maybe middle class, I dress like a rich man, you know, and there's people like me here, right? So what do you do with us? Are we still a problem then? If the borders were completely closed, martial
For
law...
my personal opinion,
Yeah.
I think if you're here, well done. You've got here. Just be a part of society. If you want to come here and claim benefits,
Right.
and then you say you came over here. If you
Sure.
come over here as an immigrant,
Right.
yeah, then legally you can bring your missus, your kids, all them,
That's
and
true.
then all of a sudden your missus gets benefits. All of a sudden
council
you've
flat.
got a council flat.
Yeah.
But what about the people who've had generations
Absolutely.
of people
Absolutely.
live
I agree.
and born here?
I agree.
They should be front of the queue.
I had a rant in my last episode
that's an
about
issue.
the council flat and how everyone's trying to get a council flat, and I think it's wrong because you shouldn't abuse the welfare
Yeah.
system.
You get fast track to things like. the
But my
immigrants
thing
get
is this:
fast
you
track.
say
Whereas if you're here, let's sort out this country and who's here.
Right.
And if everyone's happy, it won't matter what colour your
but the
skin or where
majority,
you're from.
the majority of ethnics in this country, and Andy, you can attest to this or tell me I'm talking crap. They've got good jobs.
I'm sure a lot of them.
So
do.
where did the rhetoric of they come to our country and take our jobs?
Because I work on a building site, and
Right.
let me tell you, it's probably about 80% foreign on a building site.
Are they Europeans?
Would it be better if it was just Brits though?
I'm just stating a fact. It's 80%.
Would your bosses?
Well, yeah, but the implication is that like
Because they would often.
it would be better
I think,
if they were
well,
all Brits.
from
but
my
the problem is where are you
experiences,
going to get all
yeah.
these skilled Brits from? They don't exist.
Well, education, that's what you do. You train them up, you know. I've had to go to college to get my to be a qualified electrician. There's nothing
Tremendous.
stopping
Yeah, but then like
other
I mean,
people, you know.
I've been
You've gone to uni and done.
yeah,
your
but
thing.
I've also worked in construction
Yeah.
and like trying to get hold of great people like
Yeah.
yourself is actually a lot
It's-
harder
it's-
than you
yeah.
might think. You kind of end up with
Well, then
like-
you also have to look at the education because the government they didn't want people. They've pushed university. They don't push you to go in college. Years ago, people used to leave school at 16, go learn a trade. Now you can't leave till you're 18, and all they want to do is send you to uni, put you in hundreds of thousands of pounds of debt, and people are coming out with media study degrees and then going and getting 25 grand a year jobs and stuff. So if people were pushed in the right directions, then we would have a nice, it could all be coherent. But if you're pushing all the English into these jobs where you need a degree, or they say you need a degree, when what is a media studies degree going to do when they get in a receptionist job and stuff? It's just ludicrous, you know, and that will create a shortage of workers. So the government have intentionally created and pushed universities on people, and you know, it used to be free. Now you get a massive debt.
Yeah, tell me about
It's
it.
all a business.
Yeah, George.
I think.
Straight question to you. What would it take for the rioters to stop protesting now? Be honest with me. Don't give me the employment, we're not getting jobs. What would it take for the rioters to stop protesting now? Give me an honest answer.
For the people who are actually doing that stuff, probably a miracle. I see they're handing out, they want to be cracked down and be really tough on them, which they should be.
Yeah.
There's no place for that.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear them saying that when there are riots in Leeds or something. But,
I heard about that, yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't see all that on the news. I didn't see Keir Starmer or whoever talking about that then. So.
So what would make them stop? What would make them stop
Just
now?
to be felt heard and to know that maybe there's going to be change.
What is the
for
change? What is the
better.
change that the rioters, and I'm sorry, I'm not saying you specifically,
That's okay. I hope it would just be change that things are going to get better.
What needs
there's
to get
gonna
better?
be standard of living.
Right.
People like what you can buy for your money.
Right.
And how you can earn your money.
Right.
It's a lot of these up north and stuff. They don't have a lot up there. We're
No,
lucky
they
in
don't.
London.
Yeah, it's true, you're right.
We have a lot of things down
Yeah.
there. A lot of business, a lot of work. Construction never sleeps in London.
So why is it that
It's
then? Why
just-
is it that then?
And these
yeah?
areas are forgotten areas.
Those
They have
valid,
nothing
you have
to-
very valid reasons. People who doesn't want a better life, better living conditions, better housing stock, better, NHS and all the rest of it, right? Then if they were the points that people are writing for, then you get people that look like me and people that look African joining that crowd and write.
Well, I think people
not
have
writing but
tried to
protesting.
do that, but it just gets overtaken by media and
So you're saying it's not.
BBC,
So you're
stuff
saying it's
like
not
that.
racist. You're saying it's not Islamophobic because I.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of racist people out there attacking people but I think it's probably ignorance rather than.
So burning mosques.
People are just ignorant. They don't know the facts. They're unaware of wider social structures and concepts, and they don't understand how the world works.
Ignorant or just stupid. And if they don't understand how the world
Probably
works,
a bit
right?
of both.
Yeah,
but
so
then if you're sometimes if you're not taught things or told things,
whose fault
then
is
you are
that?
gonna be
Whose fault is
stupid.
that?
You're
I'm a
gonna be
grown
stupid
man.
to the facts.
I'm a grown man. I started working at 14, right? If another 30-year-old or 40-year-old can't say, oh, I haven't had it well. Oh, yeah, it's not my fault. I can't read the alphabet. Sorry for my analogy.
Yeah.
I can't. I can't read the alphabet. I don't know how to read. I've got missing teeth. I smell. I look like a tramp. You can't
that's
then
their
just
own fault, and
yeah.
that's stupidity,
right.
because there's enough opportunity in this country. You've got to be hungry enough to go and take
So
it.
my point to you is this: I get the living standards, and I get we're all struggling. I can't afford to rent, or I don't want to rent, but it's extortionate in London, and that's everyone that's born here is facing that crisis. But my point is this: you're writing, firstly, as Andy said, horrific, 3 innocent souls, and their parents' life and their cousins and families have been destroyed forever, regardless of what you do and how many, whatever you do, right? So it started from that. And then you're saying cost of living crisis, things need to change. Yeah? What needs to change? And secondly, from my perspective, and I'm an impartial, balanced man, all I see is racism, and all I see essentially, it's not just the asylum seekers coming in. These people have had enough of people that look like me in this country, because if you come to East London, you live in East London, you also live in East London, what's the white man's ratio to every other coloured man? Andy?
I think in Newham, not sure about skin colour, but as an indigenous Brit, it's like 6% in Newham. It's really low.
And to Hamlet should be similar. Or let's say
I guess I don't know exactly.
optimistically
what the stats are.
15%, right? So if you look
But there
at
isn't any violence happening.
no
in East
violence,
London.
no, there isn't, no, it's good because we, as human beings and as a man, I don't want to get violent because I've got a predatorial, violent nature, and so do you, and so do you. If we got violent now, it'd get very dangerous, right? And that's with all men, right?
Yeah.
Whichever country, I don't care what we are. When we strip our skins off, we're men at the end of the day. We're primitive, dangerous people.
Yeah, nothing against the Northerners, but I think we're a bit more civilised down here.
Well, I don't want to.
Don't tell my wife.
Yeah. But my point is this, yeah? So these protests to me, and I'm looking at it objectively, is, yes, I get the living standards and all of that. And that's going to happen. I mean, governments change. There's referendums, there's protests happening about NHS and nurses getting paid more, etc., etc. But to me, I think this is about people that are protesting. They don't want people like me in this country anymore.
I would say it's scapegoating, right?
Yeah.
It's like sort of the same or a similar kind of set of circumstances led to Nazism in Germany, right? This is why it's worrying.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we're going to get to that point, right? We're not going to get, Adolf Hitler or look-alike sort of, giving, throwing salutes on, podiums just yet. But, it's taking a set of problems, a set of circumstances. George has talked about it, I've talked about it. There's a group of angry people, and then someone telling them, oh, it's their fault. It's giving them a target for that anger. And, call it ignorance, call it stupidity, whatever. People are receptive to that for whatever reason,
Right.
and then they act that out in the form of the violence that we're seeing today. So, that group of, or that subset of that kind of angry mob, let's say, who are actually actively participating in rioting, violence towards ethnic minorities or whatever description, they have effectively been duped by this scapegoating, that the likes of Tommy Robinson and that kind of crew espouse. And it's just a classic thing that angry people and maybe slightly less discerning people are kind of vulnerable to. So it's not that I think, well, definitely not that the UK is a racist place, but there are certain people within it who either are racist or they have been duped into committing racist activities.
I think as a man from an ethnic minority, I was born here, so it's different, right? I don't know any better or different, right? But my parents, when they did come here, obviously my dad faced racism, but I agree with you, overwhelmingly British people are very welcoming people and they're very nice people. And I get, what we don't really discuss is what is a man's nature. A man's nature is to be territorial. A man's nature is to be protective. Now I'll give you an example. I'm ethnically from Bangladesh. To you, Bangladesh, Pakistan is the same thing, right? So if Bangladesh was a first world country, so I understand the working class man. I'm an impartial man. If Bangladesh or Pakistan was a first world country and we had English people and African people, say Bangladesh and Pakistan was Britain, and England and Africa was the second and third world countries, and they came over to Bangladesh. I happen to look like a person from Bangladesh and Pakistan, and I see a bunch of English people and African people come in. Naturally, my instinct would be, whoa, they're taking over. Whoa, this is our territory. So I get that. I fully get that. But in spite of that, at the very basic levels, yeah, that tide went a long time ago. If this was in the 1970s and people were coming in and you were umming and ahhing and saying enough is enough, you should have stopped the borders then. But economically, you couldn't. Now there's 3-4 million of us, and most of us, 99% of us, whichever colour you're from around the world, if you didn't see my face, you'd think I'm English, right? If you heard my voice, you'd think I'm English.
You've got a great point, right? So, you know, I think it's about the degree of, how obvious it is that you are not indigenously, from the UK, and that makes you an obvious target for these people, right? Because there are millions of, well, definitely hundreds of thousands of Italians and French and Poles and whatever European folk who have immigrated here over decades, if not centuries,
sure.
right? And they're kind of invisible because they look like George and I do, right? But it's an incredibly easy target if you are brown skinned or black skinned, or you're obviously not ethnically European.
Yep.
And you go to a place of worship that this is a mosque, let's say, which is not a church or whatever. It kind of marks you out as something slightly different, and
Brilliant
therefore
point.
you're an easy target.
Brilliant point. Yeah, differences are not
no,
liked.
it's a sad fact, but for the type of people that are going to indulge in this sort of violence, it's that sort of level that we're talking about. It doesn't make it right.
But it's a fact.
But that is a fact. You are obviously not, in their mind, British, and therefore you become a target. The fact that, Britain is a product of millennia of immigration, right? You think about the Romans, you think about the Vikings.
Not to mention the
Angles,
colonisation
the Saxons
that they reaped.
And then, from the sort of, 18th century onwards, colonisation and the sort of the wave of immigration that's come in through that, in my view, positive immigration that's come in as a result of that. We are a nation of immigrants. We didn't, otherwise we'd be all sitting here eating cabbage and turnips, and, none of the nice food that we've got in this country is originated here, really. It's all come, even fish and chips, right? That was from the, Huguenots, from the French. Britain would not be the country it is now without centuries, millennia of immigration. But the fact that the latest wave is A, so obvious because, different colour skin, all the rest of it. B, quite numerous because, even now immigration is higher than it was before the Brexit referendum. Yeah. And there's a group of people who feel like they've been left behind. It's all just kind of culminated in this. There's
too. I mean, as a man of a different colour, I agree with you. There's too many people in this country. I can't afford a house. I can't get. Not that I use the NHS anyway.
Is that a too many people in this country problem, or is that there's not enough houses being built problem?
There's that as well, but the fact that
most of this country is wide open space. There's not too many people.
Do you protect the green belt? And I get the island, and I get the culture and the ethnically English people saying this is our country, but you have to move with the time. How many English people are in Spain?
A lot of expats all over.
How many people are in Dubai now? And to be fair, I think I get the insular, closed-minded people, the uneducated people. Life is too short to hate. Life is too short to be filled with hate, and then you're, shopping in wherever you're shopping because you see other people doing well for themselves because they've worked hard and stuff like that. So my message to them is this: I get where you're coming from a humanistic, a man's perspective. It's your territory. You're being defensive. You're feeling left out. You can barely. Some of these people can barely read the alphabet, and they speak. If they were to speak to you, you'd be like, "Say that again for me, please." But my advice to them is this: we are at a point of no return, where there is a lot of ethnicities in this country, and most of those ethnicities will proudly call themselves British, and they're fully assimilated to the culture. Now, if you've got a colour problem, that's a you problem. Whether you dream about it, whether you know, write up a business project plan about how you're going to get rid of it, nothing's going to change. There's too many ethnicities in this country, and most of them, look at the government, for instance, look at the cabinet, look how diverse it is. I'm not talking about if they're good or bad, that's up to you to decide. But this country is very diverse, and I think this country is an ambassador to the rest of the world. Why is it that the rest of the world want to come to this country? Yes, I get the economic element of it, but why else? Because surely they think that the British or the English...
It's a nice way to live, you know.
And no, but surely if someone from Sudan, for argument's sake...
For the weather, that's
no,
for sure.
that's definitely not. But surely someone from Sudan, or from Syria, or Liberia, or anywhere else in the world, right? When they come to this country, they're not aware of the sentiments of the Englishman. Oh, there's too many people, our streets are changing, they don't speak our language. They just think English people, in comparison to people in our country who are genocidal or dictatorial, they're nice people, they welcome us because they're people that want to welcome us and help us. That's what the perception they have, until they get on the boats and they come here.
It's probably more because this country has been at peace for a long time. A lot of people are coming from very bad wars and circumstances.
They could go anywhere else in the world, though. They could go to France, they could go to Italy, they could go to Germany.
A lot of people come through Europe to England. It's because we give them the government gives them loads of stuff.
English,
you get free NHS care, but you go and get a free house, they go and give you food stamps.
Well,
they put these people up in, all these people who come off the boats are going in hotels paid for by hard-working people.
I don't want to have a sort of international relations topic here, but if you're meddling, and I'm not talking about Britain, but generally speaking, if you're a first world country and you're meddling in people's countries and their politics in order so you're economically powerful, there's a thing called soft power and direct power, and then you have diplomacy. And if you go all around the world and you study it, and I'm not in the position to say because I'm not a professor at this, but all of these people are from war-torn countries that have some way been impacted by other countries that they come to. Does that make sense? So if, for instance, country X has oil, or country X has gold, a first world country thinks a powerful country, because it's all about hegemony, right? It's all about keeping power and preserving power. I want your gold, so I'm going to create an instability. Yep. What happens to that population of those people? They have to go somewhere. So it's part and parcel of, yes, I'm going to take your gold, and
that is life and that should, that's unfortunately it's the system that we live in, where money and power is more important than spiritual peace and happiness and everyone getting on.
I've done more talking than you guys, but I think you've made very valid points. Andy, what would be your message to the protesters? Like, how do you come to a solution? Because these people surely have work as well, right? You can't just, whatever they surely have work, and damaging their own streets and harming people. What's your message to them?
I think if you're engaged in criminal activity, I hope you go to jail for a long time, and I hope you get some sense knocked into you whilst you're in there. But for the people who don't, and they're peacefully protesting, I think more power to you. I agree. Do what you need to do to try and make your voice heard, and hopefully get the government of the day to listen to you, to put the right policies in place to improve your quality of life, as you were saying, George. Personally, I don't think the answer to that is to stop immigration. I think that's been a totem that's been created by successive governments, which doesn't actually. I think it's a diversion from the real issues, which is effectively poor government, and the fact that the tax revenues that we generate as a country are used poorly and squandered. I think it's basic scapegoating, and for the people that are rightly angry about stuff and protesting peacefully, more power to them.
George, what would you say to the protesters?
Stop the violence, do it peacefully. You'll be heard, and your message hopefully will resonate through politics a bit louder. But if you've got a reason to protest, just do it peacefully. You shouldn't be going around hurting innocent people and
it's women as well.
Yeah, women.
And it's my women.
Innocent women, children, anyone. It shouldn't be.
So, and I have to
just
say
keep the
this.
violence
Right?
out
I have
of
to
it.
say this, and I spoke to you before. I told you, Andy, you know, that if someone touched your wife, or God forbid your daughter, what would you do? Your facial reaction says it all. Don't say anything. And same likewise, right? We're men at the end of the day,
yeah.
right?
You're going to protect your
You're
own.
going to protect your own, right? So I've heard, you know, we're shooting on Wednesday evening. Over the last 4 days, I've heard these cowards, yeah, pulling off Muslim women's headscarves, aciding, 4 or 5 of them jumping an individual, which is quite cowardly. I mean, you know what, I don't condone the football hooliganism that happened in the 1980s. I wasn't even born. But one thing they did have, and I respect this, they fought man to man. It was prepared, it was organised. The West Ham lot will tell the Millwall lot, we'll meet at this time, at this date, you know, you're ready for it. No one got jumped from behind, and no one got shivved, and no one's women were touched. Could you imagine if, like I said, I told you now, if your wife got touched, it's, you know, it's Armageddon, right? As a man, it's Armageddon. Equally, if the women in my family or women from my community got touched, it would be Armageddon. What are we foreseeing here? It would be anarchy. Because ultimately, like I said, I'm a man that can cause brutal damage, and you are men that can cause brutal damage. So where are we left with here?
Left with a lot of pieces to pick up.
And is that going to be the solution? Because ultimately, regardless of what happens, we're here to stay. You're here to stay. Why can't we live happily ever after?
I think we're all agreed that violence is not, you know, there's not going to be a solution to anything.
So
right?
what about these?
But I think it comes
And
down
I
to
hope-
education, I think. Sorry.
I was going to say, I hope the people that have done any of the things you described get the full force of the law thrown at them, and then when they're in prison, I hope they get the full force of, you know, mob justice thrown at them after that as well. None of us are going to sit here and defend anyone assaulting anybody else. Like, it's horrific. It's just a tragedy, especially because it's a result of, you know, 3 little girls getting murdered.
Oh,
it's
just
horrific.
I think, like we've said earlier, it's a culmination of lots of things for decades that are, you know,
But you haven't given me a solution.
It's not just one thing, because I don't have one. I wish I had one. No, it's you got probably a few things. I think education, you know, and just improving people's way of life, because the quality of life in England is tough and it's
Surely
going
it's
down.
choices as well. I mean, I've fallen out of love, and I completely digress. I've fallen out of love with football, right? I used to be a West Ham fan. I used to go to Upton Park and then the Olympic Stadium. And not all, but at least 50% of the fans in that stadium, and die-hard, Hammers, all the rest of it, right, Irons, but 50% of the fans shouldn't be there because they can't afford to be there. Tickets aren't cheap, so you're going there and you've got a season ticket, and you know you're in Sports Direct gear. With all due respect, surely it's life choices as well. Who cares if men are running around in shorts getting paid £300,000 while you're making a pittance? Surely it's life choices. I'm going to go to the pub and drink 6 pints of
Not all of us
beer.
can go and kick a football and earn 300 grand a week, unfortunately.
But do you get my point here? It's life choices here.
It is, but then if you have I've chosen to do electrics and go in the building and construction trade, and I earn the right money.
Yeah.
But compared to what my profession was earning 20, 30 years ago, it's nothing. You know, we're earning a lot less than they did back then.
I
And
agree.
the quality of life. So that's what it is. It's
But that's
about
an
the
everyone
quality-
problem, though.
It
we
is.
We should all peacefully protest about that. But this is turned into, it's your problem, it's your fault because I'm earning less, because maybe I'm stupid, or maybe I'm going to spend £1,000 a year or £1,500 a year
Sometimes
on a
talking
season
doesn't
ticket.
resolve things, though. You
How
can
is
talk
violent?
and talk,
This is a first world
but
country,
that's-
though.
But that's the point I make. People have tried to get their point across. People have tried to say, we need to do this, we need to do that. You know, we're tired of this, we need better quality of life, we need, you know, better wages, jobs, this, that. You know, we want to be able to afford to go and buy a house that you can live in and, you know, build that little castle for you and your family. And if people are slowly eroding that away, when is enough enough? If you're backed into a corner enough, you're going to start swinging punches
So
eventually.
an scapegoat.
That's
I'll tell you-
all.
I'll-
It's just a reaction to everything that's going on.
I'll tell you
know.
what. So these ethnic minorities, particularly from South Asia and even Africa, that come to this country, who delivers your food to you? Those Uber cyclists and delivery
A lot of them are
cyclists.
probably immigrants.
They
yeah.
work 15 hours flat on a pittance. Some of them have 3 or 4 jobs that you and I wouldn't do, jobs that you and I would look at, think, I'm British. And
Walk
even
to
me.
the shops. Walk to go and get your food. What do you need to call Uber
No,
for then?
but what I'm
That's the whole
saying
point.
is these jobs, and again, anything in my religion, if it's permissible, which is halal, it's not forbidden, and you're not harming anyone, how dare anyone look down on you for doing that job? You're earning an honest living. So these people are doing
These
3 or 4
menial
jobs.
So
you won't do
years
it.
ago, I used
won't
to go
do
to
it.
the cafe when I was a kid.
Right.
And it would either normally be a young person who might be on their summer holidays
Right.
or half term, or they come and do that as their Saturday.
But the
job,
kids in this
yeah?
country don't want to these jobs anymore. What about the
Because
fruit
they
pickers?
can't.
What do you mean
Because
they
they
can't?
can't get that Saturday job now because they've got some foreigner
Yeah.
or an immigrant
Yeah.
who will work there for less money
Right.
and work. Yeah, who'll do it for less money and thing. When before that it might be an old woman who's
I partially
retired,
agree.
husband's passed away, so she goes and helps out a few
I
hours a
partially
day.
agree.
The kids come in for a few hours a day.
I disagree.
You know, it's
We're from a similar generation,
then-
right? The kids
yeah.
nowadays, they have iPads and iPhones at the age of 3. They're looking at Love Island.
I'm so
The men
glad
in the
I never
country-
had that as
I'm
a
saying,
kid.
so the men in this country now, the young boys growing up, they're more fixated with Love Island than kicking ball and hanging around with their mates. They're more concerned about selfies and looking pretty, right?
Yeah.
So I don't buy fully that those jobs ain't there for English people. I do feel like, and this includes me as well, I'm British born, I'm English born, I'm London hospital born. That
I'm
I
only
wouldn't do
going
these
from what I've
jobs.
seen on like my high road.
Yeah.
Going back from when I was a kid to how it's different now. So it's maybe different in other parts of the country or even London itself. But that's just from my experience.
My thing is, it's
what I've seen.
I think, and again, Andy, please weigh in. I'm doing an awful lot of talking here because I'm quite passionate about this, and I'm speaking for the ethnic minorities here.
Yeah.
I think it's I don't think it's an ethnic problem. I think it's everyone's problem. The fact that we can't afford houses, the fact that we can't get NHS appointments, the fact that, and to be honest, you're not going to do a delivery job. I'm not going to do a delivery job. But they will. Who's going to serve your food? Even these Indian restaurants, right? My dad made a living, came to this country and opened restaurants. I wouldn't work in those restaurants anymore because I've developed. He wouldn't want that for me. So who's going to do these
people
jobs?
should also be taught to be a bit more humble, about things. But then if you could earn a good living from just having that one restaurant or that one shop, then why wouldn't you have it?
People on the
always
dole
want to chase that.
Not just that, and it's the way it's set up. People on the dole would rather, they'll put their principle to a side. They'd rather make that £600-700. I'm not generalising here at all. There's people that need to be on the dole because they can't work and they're looking for work. But the mentality, I think, is that there's people on the dole that are making £600-700 with housing benefit £1,000. It doesn't make it worth their while to get off their arse, stop watching EastEnders and Love Island, to go and get on a cycle and deliver people's food because they're getting paid for sitting on their arse.
But then
and then they
they'd be
complain that they have no
paid
jobs.
less, and then the social would take their house off them, their flat off them, because
Yeah.
now they get a job, they're not
Yeah.
allowed to live there.
Right.
So if I constantly say I see someone, I'll go and feed it, give him 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
Oh mate, there's a gym membership this month.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Netflix.
Yeah.
Is he going to go and get a job and he's going to sit there and wait for me? If you sit there and wait for handouts,
So why are they
you're
still
in that
those,
lifestyle.
those very same people are protesting, same
So
people are taking our
people-
jobs. So I don't get it. Tell me.
That's this.
Tell
doesn't
me where I'm
make
going
sense.
wrong here.
But
there is a massive contradiction.
Yeah.
There.
Andy, tell me.
Right.
But then if they could be educated and get those jobs,
If they could
But,
be educated.
yeah.
This country, and I have immense respect. I mean, to be fair, I was out at the Berlin match, through and through supporting England. And if anyone said otherwise, I'd be like, piss off. I was born here, I've been supporting England all my life. And I was at the final. But my point is this, right? So you're saying if they're educated. In second and third world countries, people walk 10 miles to be educated. Whereas kids in our country, all colours,
because
You're 100% right.
that
There is
gener-
a
from-
massive
yeah.
undervaluation.
Andy, tell me.
There's a massive undervaluation of education in the UK. I read some statistics a while ago, so I'm going to get this wrong. But ethnically, South Asian, African, and East Asian kids are just massively outperforming, particularly white boys. There's something about the education system which is failing white boys in this country. And then if you look at, well, guess what? Who's the majority of these rioters? They're all white boys, and a lot of them are quite young. There's something fundamentally broken about either the way that these kids are being brought up by their families, and or the way that the education system is motivating them to better themselves, so that when they get to the point where they're employable, actually, if there's somebody who's much more motivated than, much more better qualified with, than them from outside of the country to come and take the job, of course the employer is going to go, well, I'm going to take, Mohammed or, whomever over, little Johnny, because little Johnny probably would rather be, smoking crack, or I don't know, whatever it might be.
I get the statistic, but I think most white boys in this country are doing very well. And I've got friends that are white, my age, and they're killing it, and they're looking at Porsches, and they're trying to buy houses and stuff.
That's not the people we're talking about.
No, we're not.
We're talking about the people who are left behind, and that is a really, really tough.
So it's for policymakers.
There is not a simple solution.
I get it. I think they need to be
when
addressed.
they're told that there is a simple solution, which is stop immigration, they'll jump at it as a group.
So it's really for policymakers to really look at this and address it.
Massively, yeah. How do you bring that group of people who've effectively been left behind by waves of globalization, how do you bring them back into, into a state where they do have a better quality of life, where they do have an interest in...
Maybe ban drugs.
But drugs is a symptom, it's not a cause.
I mean, but if where I'm from, right, and I'd say I live in a somewhat pluralistic community, but some of the white people that are very nice, we all get along and stuff, but one thing that they do have, most of them, not all, and these are like not you and not you, they're probably spending £100 on skunk every week, £100 on skunk every week, and then their kids that I've seen grown up now, they were maybe 5, they're about in their teenage now, they're also smoking skunk. By the time they're 17, they're pregnant.
This is what I'm talking about.
So it's a vicious cycle here. So maybe ban drugs.
Well, they are banned, aren't they?
That's true as well. That's true as well. They are banned, aren't they? Yeah, they are banned.
In this country, they're illegal. Drugs are illegal.
So, I mean, we can talk about this and go around in circles, but I'm glad you guys have come on and addressed... Well, we tried to address the issue. I think this isn't a 1-hour conversation, won't cut it. But all in all, these riots do need to stop, because I don't see them ending in tranquility. And if people get harmed on either side, it would just be a reaction, a chain reaction. And it's not the way. Come on, George, tell me.
Yeah, I agree. I think violence isn't the way. There's ways to go around it. Hopefully, maybe things will change. Maybe, I don't know, but just... stop being ignorant. We've all got to get on. We've all got to live here, and we've all got to make this a nice place for ourselves.
Thank you. I'm glad. I hope that some of these people can listen, and I truly do feel their pain. But there is no room for hate and malicious hate, because ultimately, like I said, we're primitive people. We're men. We're men, and we can get very dangerous. On either side, if someone touches your family, you're going to get dangerous, regardless of what his skin colour is. Nature of man. Andy, final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I think if anyone touched any of my family, my wife would probably get pretty violent as well, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's going to stop these riots is sufficient numbers of people getting locked up, sadly. I think, if you look at the 2011 riots, there was something like 1,400 arrests as a result of that. I think as part of these riots, at the moment, the tally is something like 400. And actually, the 2011 riots were predominantly non-whites, right? So it was.
But I sympathise with them, because if you're saying they've got these entrenched problems as it is.
Oh, there are reasons, right? And, there's no condoning the violence, but there is context within which is happening, which is important to acknowledge.
But having them locked up now, they're further in the system now. They come out again, and they what's the term? Recidivism? Is it recidivism, where they perennially sort of go into this? Is it recidivism?
What's like reoffending?
It's over 50% go back.
So if they get locked up for this now, and they're already in a shitter, no job, nothing like that. How do you solve their problem?
Well, I don't think for some of those individuals, they might actually just be beyond saving, actually. From a, you're never going to turn their life completely around, but what you might be able to do now that you know that they are probably actively racist and circulating in, extreme right-wing type, media, social media forums, all that sort of stuff, you can mitigate the damage that they might cause as an individual. But, always hopeful that somehow, by some miracle, they might end up becoming a productive member of society. But the chances are you're going to have to put them into the criminal justice system, and they're probably going to be in and out of that for the rest of their lives, and we're going to all pay for that
Through our taxes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, gents. You've both been great. I've been awfully hostile, and I've interrupted you, and I've spoken quite a lot. But I think we've had a good conversation. Obviously, we're not policymakers to solve these issues, but hopefully this would show us that we can sit down and talk. And there are problems that we both empathise and sympathise with. And it's an us problem rather than you problem and me problem. Thank you very much. I may invite you both on again. I hope you've benefited from it. Obviously, the tensions are high, and my sincere advice to everyone is please don't be violent. I get the pressures that we are facing with on a day-to-day basis from living standards, housing, cost of living, and also, we're men at the end of the day. And I use the analogy that, if you're an indigenous Englishman and you see a group of people that do look dissimilar to you, you may have prejudices and stuff, but we live in first world Britain, and the whole world really is multicultural. So let's try and live side by side with each other. And also another thing, these far right protesters have parents, the people that they harm have parents, and on both sides, neither of your parents raised you to be damaged or hurt or put in an early grave or put in hospital. So think about your parents before you go and do something stupid, and hopefully we've benefited. I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.